In this presentation, we are going to talk a little bit about childhood obesity. So, when you were growing up, what did your parents say during dinner? Or let's even take a step back and think about what was a typical dinner, the dinner environment, the dinner scenario in your household. What kind of things did your parents say to you? And let's take it a step further. Do you think that these experiences had an impact on you and your eating as an adult? So here's some common things. You need to eat. You can't have your dessert until you finish your plate. My mother's favorite was if you don't eat that now, you're going to have it for breakfast. And let me tell you, there were many times that I had lima beans for breakfast because that is still a food that I do not like. Um, and, the rule was I had to finish my plate or else I would be eating it the very next day. So, what do the experts recommend? Well, basically, and this is going to make perfect sense. You should provide healthy food, and most children will eat enough calories without being forced. So, if you have a child that is a difficult eater, um, avoiding distractions. And I've worked with some families that thought their child would eat better if they were watching, the iPad or doing something. But, that can turn into mindless eating. Theoretically, as an adult, some of you may just eat without paying a whole lot of attention, and you're not paying attention to whether or not you're full or not. During growth spurts, kids will eat more. When they're not growing, they eat less. And it is quite remarkable how little a toddler needs if it is healthy food. So I think, another thing we often think that, the plate should have lots of food on it, but really they don't need as much food as I think we think they do. If you are still concerned, though, of course, you should talk to your pediatrician. So, childhood obesity is linked with multiple medical conditions such as type 2 diabetes, hypertension, asthma, sleep apnea, liver disease, greater risk of early onset cardiovascular diseases, problems with joints, muscular pain. But in addition to that, there's also psychosocial effects. Emotional distress, low self-esteem, body image issues, higher rates of bullying, discrimination, social isolation, increased risk of anxiety, depression. Also, there is a risk of childhood obesity persisting into adult obesity, which then has a lot of the same risks in and more. Because then we're looking at possibly obesity-related cancers, heart disease, metabolic disorders, in addition to economic costs. So lots of reasons why childhood obesity should be taken seriously. So for our purposes, we're going to define obesity as a body mass index or BMI at or above the 95th percentile for the child's age and sex. Now, there are many other things involved in this, but just to keep things simple, this is the definition I'm going to use throughout this presentation. So the best strategy is just to ensure a variety of food, including those that are low in fat and high in nutritional content. In other words, from the very beginning, just offering healthy foods with the understanding that some days toddlers, young children will eat more, they will eat less. And certainly I understand that there are a lot of variables involved in this, and it's not as easy as I am making it sound. However, that would be the initial strategy, is just to always offer healthy food. So if one day they are just eating fruit, that is fine. The next day maybe they're eating some lean meat or some vegetables, that is fine. So that would be the ideal.
And just to clarify, when I say low fat, I mean foods that are naturally low fat. We are going to try to avoid processed foods whenever possible, and certainly avoid foods that have artificially no fat, because sometimes they add other things that, to make up for the no fat. And it would be better just to have, a naturally lower fat food. Of course, you're going to stay away from anything artificial, no artificial sweeteners. In fact, diet drinks, we were going to steer clear. But then I would also steer clear of, high sugar foods like regular soda. Preschoolers, just to keep in mind, they do need healthy fats, so we don't want to go no fat, because fat is used for myelination of your axons, and it's required for healthy functioning and healthy growing. So, like I said, what about picky eaters? Well, we're going to give children an opportunity to develop their own preferences, try to give them as many different foods as possible. It is easier when they are little to avoid processed food, which to a lot of us tastes good but isn't good for us. And to also try to give more vegetables, more healthy food just from the very beginning. So that becomes more the norm. Although, again, I acknowledge that it's easier said than done in some situations. Which brings us to dessert and candy. My advice, and this is just my advice, would be to avoid desserts when children are little, and certainly to avoid rewards. Like, I'll give you this chocolate if you eat your lima beans. So a dessert could be, a fruit or something, because you're putting a high value. When you say something's dessert, you say it's special. There's also the connotation that this food is extra good. And I'm talking now again for toddlers. What if the extra special food was, some strawberries or some raspberries, or my daughter liked peas. Okay, so what if that was, and we put high value on that? When I was growing up, I heard finish your plate before dessert. We do not recommend that. And of course, you want to limit candy, high sugar sweets, period. So why are we talking so much about this? Well, one, obesity is more common than it was before, and obesity is brought on by genetics, but it also has a social, emotional component to it. So we want to avoid that piece. I mean, your genetics are what your genetics are. And I haven't even gotten into the exercising and, being active and all those pieces. I'm purely just talking about eating right now. But it is easier to teach healthy eating when kids are young. And it can be very difficult as an adult to manage, when you're bored. Do you eat? Do you need to finish your plate? I mean, some of the behaviors that we do as adults that contribute to obesity, it's much easier just to not even get those habits in from the beginning.